Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to a BooktubePrize video. Yes, this time I was a slacker with the quarterfinals. As you know, I didn't put up my ranking video. I just, reasons, forgot about it to be honest, and then it was too late. But the semifinals, I wrote it down in my calendar, and so here is my ranking for the BooktubePrize semifinals fiction. I judged Group B. There were two groups left, 6 books each group. And as you might know, the BooktubePrize is organized by Robert from Bader-Horz. I will leave a link to his channel down below. And kudos to Robert for organizing and calculating and dealing with the stress of judges not being on time, mailing their ranking. So I have nothing but respect for you, Robert, for dealing with this. But anyway, so it's the second year now, and as you probably know, this year we have fiction and non-fiction, and I judged the fiction, as I said. And in the semifinals, there were 2 groups left, 6 books each. I'm repeating myself. And in Group B, I judged Michael. I have the list here. Because it's in alphabetical order. Michael Crummy, The Innocence, Tracy, Chevalier, A Single Thread, Yangtze Show, The Night Tiger, Bernadine, Evaristo, Girl, Woman, Other, Christy, Lefteri, The Beekeeper of Aleppo, and Anne Patchett, The Dutch House. And what I will do first is just tell you a little bit how I go about this, and then give you my ranking. So I judged all the fiction rounds from the very first list where we tried to come up with the first 40-something for the octafinals. And of course, we are with a rather big group of judges, I think more than 50 in the fiction category. And of course, when you go on judging, there are books in your group that you normally wouldn't read, or that are just not your thing. And that certainly happened with me in this fiction Group B. There are a couple of books in there, it's just not for me. So I try to make a combination when I judge the 6 books, because you have to rank them, which is good, I think. So it's not like, they are all just not for me, all 2-star books. No, you still have to rank them. So you are forced, and I mean that in a positive way, to still think which book you prefer over another, or which book you think is better. And because most books in my group were just not for me, it's not so much that I looked at the books and that which book do I really like, but more which book, even though it's not for me, did what it was supposed to do in that specific kind of book that it wanted to be. But I also took into account things that really irked me personally. And the bottom 3 books, if you want, so the number 6, 5, and 4, they are all books that I had a personal pet peeve with, and that's why they are in the bottom group. Because as you know, probably only the first 3 of each group will advance. I will leave a link to the website of the BooktubePrize, so you can have a look which books started with which books we started out, and also a link to Robert's announcement videos of the 6 finalists in fiction. But on to my ranking. And coming in at number 6 was The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. Anne Patchett is an American author, and I don't get along with her very well. That kind of commercial fiction she writes mostly isn't for me. But that was not the reason that The Dutch House ended up in number 6. The Dutch House is a multi-decade tale about siblings, a brother and a sister, and it starts when they are children. Their mother dies, leaves, we don't know really. The father remarries, and they don't get along with the new wife, their stepmother, and that's mutual. And they are forced out of the house and out of their inheritance because the father is rather rich. And the house, the Dutch house, is where they used to live. It's a gigantic mansion, and the whole story then circles around what happened to the siblings and to the house and the family. You know, as I used to always say, plot ensues from this premise. I found the writing was okay, and Patchett can certainly write a good sentence, but I found the story completely unbelievable and laughable. There were coincidences after coincidences that just made me eye roll, like, really? This is happening now in order for the plot to go on? The characters were also laughable to me, the way they acted and what happened to them. And because Anne Patchett is a very experienced writer, because the other books in the number 5 and 4 had, also pet peeves, and I didn't think they were well done. But Anne Patchett is a really experienced writer. And for her to write, pardon my French, a crappy story like this, I thought that means that she has to be on number 6. I know a lot of people like The Dutch House, and if you loved it, fine. But for me, it was just a story that didn't make sense at all, and it wasn't well done. Number 5 in my ranking, even more of a minority opinion, I would say, I'm sure, because that was Bernadine Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other. Bernadine Evaristo, a UK writer, and the book won or jointly won the Booker Prize last year. It's now on the shortlist for the Women's Prize. And I just didn't think it was that good. I have made a full review last year when it was on the Booker Prize list. I will leave a link to that lengthier review down below. The premise of the book sounded really fascinating. It's 12 women, mostly women, Black, British, various generations from, 60-something, 20-something, and everything in between, various classes, a banker, an artist, a student, various gender issues also, and that sounded really fascinating. But the execution just couldn't convince me. The writing was fine, not great, but fine. But the characters remained really flimsy, and that, of course, I know that if you have 12 people, 12 characters that you, shed light on in a book, it can't go that deep. I understand that. But for me, many of the characters were not individuals, but types. The banker type, successful woman type, and the artist type. And that irks me. The way that the plot, as it were, within those 12 character studies was handled didn't convince me at all. There were the ways that these lives had to come together felt rather forced, but also, some of these women experience really traumatic events, and that is told, and then you're not even 3 pages on and it's all resolved, and and one of the main irks, and that is really a very, very personal pet peeve, because again, this book is not only lauded by many, but also loved by many. But a very personal pet peeve for me is many of the women, I would say 2/3 or something, or at least half of the women are heterosexual. And no matter what class, no matter what generation you're talking about, all they really want is a man. And something like that just puts me off so much. that I can't deal. So, Girl, Woman, Other, despite all the praise and the love it gets, for me, it was just not a good book, and it ended up in the number 5 spot. On to number 4, and that was a book that I struggled a lot with the ranking, and that was Michael Crummey's The Innocence, because it's beautifully written. Michael Crummey is a Newfoundland author, prize-winning author, also poetry. And this book is about 2 siblings who are orphaned. The father died, mother is gone also, in a really desolate and isolated environment in Labrador and Newfoundland. And it's about their struggle to survive and their relationship. Beautifully written. Again, that's why I struggle. I don't like child narrators at all. For me, it doesn't work. It didn't work for me with Emma Donohue's The Room at all. It didn't work here. And then there were plot developments that just had me eye roll. I'm not gonna, if you haven't read the book, I don't want to give any spoilers, but a couple of things happened between the siblings that I thought reading, no, please don't. And then it happens. And right from the start, there was another thing that really was a minor issue. And again, that is a very subjective thing, that sometimes something minor occurs in a book and that takes on such a huge thing, which is unfair, I know, but these rankings are supposed to be subjective, so there you go. And the minor thing was that Crummey had this, like I said, isolated environment, 2 young children, they are not even 10, 11, when the book opens. And then he called the man Everett and the woman Ada. Like, Adam and Eve, but then in reverse. And you think that's, look at me. I know it's not important, but I just thought this is so stupid. And the beautiful writing didn't make me, rank the book higher. But if you are not put off by all the things that I just mentioned, you will probably love it. So give it a try, because despite all my very, very subjective and personal issues with the book, a lot of people might love it. Then on to the 3 books that were in my top 3, so the 3 books that I thought should advance. And the first one, number 3, was Yang Tse Cho's The Night Tiger. The book is absolutely not for me. It's sort of this magical realism world with Chinese mythology, magical realism kind of fantasy. It's not for me. It's about mainly 2 people, a young 11-year-old houseboy, Ren, and when his master dies, his master has lost a finger. Nobody knows how exactly, but Ren has promised his master that he will find the finger, because otherwise the soul will not find rest. And he has, according to mythology, 49 days. And on the other end is a young woman. The book is set in the 1930s, by the way, who wanted to become a doctor, but as a woman in the 1930s in Malaysia, that was not possible. But she received the finger for some reason. And then, the story develops how these people meet and how they get to save the Ren's dead master. Yeah, not for me, and it was it bored me at times. I thought it was too lengthy in the middle. It dragged on. But that could also be because I just don't like these kind of stories, these kind of fairy tale-esque magical realism story. But I thought it did what it was supposed to do as a tale of magical realism. And therefore, I thought there were no big personal irks, and that's why this book, even though it was not for me, ended up number 3. Number 2, not a big surprise, there are only 2 books left. But in number 2, I put Christy Lefteri's The Beekeeper of Aleppo. It's a first novel, and that always gets more slack from me if you are a first, a debut writer. That's one thing. And I thought the premise was really interesting and timely, topical. It's about Nuri and his wife Afra. They lived in Syria. Nuri was a beekeeper and Afra is an artist. And then the civil war hit Syria and they tried to flee to the UK, a refugee story, which I think is an important story to tell. And Afra, she experienced things in her past, so she is blind, which is not, it's a mental blindness, so to speak, because there's nothing wrong with her eyes. And then we follow, in a fairly linear timeline, we follow their journey from Syria, war-torn Syria, to the UK. We get flashbacks of their lives back then and what happened, especially to the rest of the family, I will say, without going into details. But the story, I didn't think it was that good, because I felt the main problem with the book was that the author was too attached to the topic and didn't make the characters, for me, really individuals and lively. But still, there is an important story and there were beautiful moments in the book. So I thought this story and debut author deserved a spot in the finals, and that's why I ranked it number 2. That obviously leaves one book, which I put in the number 1 spot, and that was Tracy Chevalier, A Single Thread. Tracy Chevalier is a writer of historical fiction, an American writer, probably most famous for her book, The Girl with the Pearl Earring. And she is not a writer that I gravitate towards. It's the kind of, again, commercial fiction that just doesn't appeal to me very much. This book is also historical fiction set in Winchester in the UK, a cathedral town in the early 1930s. And our main character is Violet, one of the, as they called it back then, surplus women. Her fiancé died in the First World War, like the man of many women, hence surplus woman. And she tries to find her way after this loss. She moves to Winchester and gets acquainted with a couple of women who embroider. They embroider kneelers for the cathedral. She also befriends one of the bell ringers. The cathedral has these beautiful bells, and we learn a lot about embroidery and bell ringing. But it's just really well crafted. It's not a story that, like I said, appeals to me that much, but it is well written, well crafted. It also has a little bit of a touch of women's independence, and it discusses 2 of the women that Violet meets are lesbians and how that is dealt with back then. Not very well, and the relation between women and men back at the time, which I always find interesting as a topic. And it was an easy breezy read, but it was well done, and I enjoyed it in a way. So that's why I put it in number 1. So that was my ranking. From my group, my number one and the number two advanced, and also, which is not a surprise to me, Bernadine Evaristo's book Girl, Woman, Other advanced, and 3 books from the other group. Of course, I will list them down below, and I will also be judging the finals. Looking forward to that. That will be interesting. I hope you enjoyed my ranking video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I'm looking forward to talking to you in the comments, and I will see you all soon in the next one.